Oyunlarla gerçekten başımız dönüyor değil mi? Ne olacak? Nereye gidiyoruz? En sonunda hepimiz birden çıldırmayalım da gidip bir köye falan bir yerlere yerleşirmişiz. Gerçekten sonu yok. Olağanüstü hepsi. Şimdi efendim çok uzaklardan bir konuğumuz var biliyorsunuz. Michael bu Amerika'dan, San Francisco'dan geldi. Sizler için geldi. Hiçbir ücret talep etmeden geldi. Görüyorsunuz. Biz de zirveye geç geliyoruz. Yani Amerika'dan kendisi geliyor buralara bizler için. Her neyse şimdi benim gibi çok iyi İngilizce bilmeyenler de vardır herhalde. Simultane kulaklıklarımız olacak. Arzu eden oradan temin edebilir. Çünkü kendisi gerçekten çok özel bir insan. Çok teşekkür ediyoruz. Ve güçlü alkışlarınızla efendim davet etmek istiyorum. Dr. Michael Bu. Can you please? Welcome. Welcome.
Thank you. So, I am okay. This is actually the title slide. So it's a great honor to be here, and today I'm going to talk to you a little bit about digital transformation. Okay, so you all heard about digital transformation from yesterday, right? What is digital transformation anyway? What is digital transformation? Think about this for a second, okay? So first of all, I want to make a fair apology that I'm completely out of business card. So if you want to LinkedIn to me, please just follow this URL here to. Okay, I think this is the laser pointer. Yeah, okay, it's very hard to see on this emissive screen. So maybe I have to use my hand. Yeah, traditional pointer, right? So yeah, LinkedIn to me, and that's the best way to connect to me, okay? So digital transformation is basically the adoption of digital technology to transform the way you work, the way you do your business, right? That's simple as it is, right? But keep in mind that transformation is a lasting change, okay? It's not something that you do today and a month and then maybe even a year, and then you go back to what you're doing before, okay? There's no going back, okay? It's like this butterfly, okay? This is the real transformation. It's called metamorphosis, okay? Now, so with that background in mind, okay, this is the agenda that I will tell you today, I will talk about. So first, I am going to talk about digital transformation, and this is actually something that it's a story that has happened before, okay? A lot of you may not realize this, but this is actually history repeating itself. So I'm going to show you why that is the case. And then I am going to tell you about how do you go from engagement to enlistment, okay, and some examples of that, because that is actually a way to go beyond what we marketers do today of engaging the customer. And then we're going to talk about a strategy of how do you actually, have this sustained, lasting changes in your business. Because many times when you adopt digital technologies, it's a disruption, right? People use it for a while, and then people go back to what they're doing before. And that's not a digital transformation. That's a disruption. That's it. It's a spike, and then it's gone. That's not transformation, okay? Transformation is sustained, lasting changes, okay? And then we're going to take a look at, finally, a little bit of a social maturity, because it requires that to achieve a true transformation of your business. Okay, so you all seen this data from yesterday. Every company is pressured to change digitally. Okay, a lot of companies are pressure to change. And there's actually, 70% of the pressure come from competitors. And if you are one of those companies who are leaders in your industry, you're not worried about competition. Your customer actually demand you to change, because customers are already adopting digital technology. They're eating it like, food, breathing it like air. Companies are struggling and lagging behind, okay? And even if your customer love you, your employees actually demand you to change, because employees also want to work differently too, right? You heard this from yesterday from many people, from Paolo Puccini, and also from, I'm not sure how to pronounce his name, Valley Ozturk, right? About dancing with digital transformation, right? So if we look at digital transformation as a project, okay, I don't know too much about project management, but okay, if you look at digital transformation as a project, a lot of time digital transformation fail, okay? There's even studies that publish and says that about 2/3, about 70% of the digital transformation project actually fail, okay? And you actually look at why it fails, then it comes down to 4 things. It comes down to technology, people, process, and finally the culture, okay? And you all know that changing technology is hard, but it's not very difficult. It can be done, right? But changing process and changing culture, that is very challenging. But that's what's going to make your change lasting, right? If you don't change the process and the people and the culture, things are not going to change, right? I think people are going to go back to the way they worked before, and that's not a transformation. And that's why digital transformation fail. So let's look at each one of these components, okay? So by the way, if I'm talking too fast, please tell me to slow down, because when I get excited, I talk very fast. So, okay, all right. So you guys can just give me a hand, like this, and I'll slow down, okay? Okay, let me slow down a little bit. So anyway, the first component is technology. And every digital transformation project starts with some deployment or some upgrade of technology. That's why it's called digital transformation. It's the adoption of some kind of digital technology, okay, to change the way you work, to change the way you do business, right? So very often, the problem with using technology is that you use old technology, outdated technology, right? And sometimes, even if you use new technology, right, these new technology are not integrated with the old technology because the core business, your core business is still run on the legacy system. So even if you're using new technology, they have to be integrated with the old legacy system in order for you to be successful, right? And very often, because digital transformation always starts with some technology upgrade, some technology adoption, technology deployment. A lot of people think that that's it, right? It's a technology problem. It's an IT problem, right? So that's often will silo this project into one department. And therefore, you don't get the transformation of the entire business. Digital transformation, as I said again, is the transformation of your entire business, okay? So, okay, the second one is people. And very often, this comes from, it's a problem with the leadership, okay? Digital transformation means a lot of things. You probably heard this from yesterday, that sometimes digital transformation can be mobile, can be customer experience, can be, big data, can be social, right? So what do you mean when you say digital transformation, right? The leadership have to have very clear sense. You have to have clarity what you mean when you say digital transformation, okay? Because all social, digital, mobile, Internet of Things, all these are digital technology. They're all digital technology, right? Like I said, digital transformation is the adoption of digital technology, and all of these are digital technology that you could adopt to change the way you work. But do you adopt mobile technology, social technology, big data technology? What do you do, okay? So be clear what you mean by digital transformation. And sometimes the leadership can be very clear, but they don't support it, right? But sometimes it is actually too much top-down control. I want digital transformation to be this way, okay? That also doesn't work too well because transformation is a lasting change of your entire company, right? People have to embrace it. Your employee have to embrace it, okay? And sometimes the challenge is with access to talent. Okay, so I'm going to talk a little bit about that, digital maturity. Sometimes you don't have enough people inside your company with the digital maturity to adopt this technology. Okay, so that requires a little bit of training as well, right? And okay, so let's look at process. When do process go wrong, okay, with digital transformation is that very often is this problem, again, right? It's the belief that it's an IT problem. It's a silo effort, right? And depends on what kind of digital technology you adopt. It could be marketing automation, new marketing automation technology, a new customer experience management technology, right? Then it may be silo in marketing, right? But like I said, digital transformation is the transformation of the entire company. If the entire company doesn't change, your digital transformation actually fails, okay? So it's not a silo effort. It's a company-wide effort, okay? And sometimes it's actually not agile and fast enough for you to innovate, right? You have to change very quickly in this world in order to have any success in changing your company. And sometimes the process are not even aligned because different different departments actually have different measurement and different KPIs. So very often they're not aligned, and so they don't work together, right? And finally is the culture, right? One of the biggest problems with the culture is actually not customer-centric, okay? You're doing your business, but what are you actually doing your business for? For yourself or to serve your customer, okay? You have to have a customer-centric mindset in order for your digital transformation to be more successful. And very often it's also short-term thinking. People think that this is the IT project, this is a marketing project, this is a support customer service project. There's silo, there's small scope, right? And then people start to think short-term. And that's actually why very often digital transformation fail also, okay? And as a result, because sometimes the process are misaligned, there's a little collaboration across department, right? And that often will also lead to the failure of the total, complete transformation of your company, right? Which is essentially a failure of digital transformation, okay? All right. Now, the question that I'm really interested in is like, why do companies need to change today? Why? Have you thought about that? Everybody talk about digital transformation, but why? Okay? And this is where, it's a history that's repeating itself. And that's why I think it's very useful to kind of look at how we get to where we are today, okay? And then see where we're going in the future. So to do that, we have to roll back time, okay? Let's roll back time maybe 100, 150 years, okay? 100, 150 years ago, once upon a time, there was a time where all business is actually done in one place. And that place is basically the market, right? Company or business just have to go to the market and sell, right? If there's an issue with your product, with your transaction, you argue about it in the market, and if you're not happy with the product, you go to the market and deal with it, right? Everything is happening in the market. And that has been the way of business for probably 500 years or 1,000 years, before, right? Then something happened. Technology came, okay? The first wave of technology is transportation. Transportation basically allow business to do business with other people who's much further away from you, right? So what does that do? That basically make your market bigger. Your market grew, becoming bigger, right? Now, another parallel track of technology that's also happening in about the same time is basically communication. So communication also allow company to operate much more efficiently. So as a result, company also scale and they become bigger too, okay? Now, if you're in business, right, you're gonna say, well, that's great, right? I have a big company in a big market. What's wrong with that, right? That's perfect, right? It is a good thing, but it also created a problem, okay? And the problem it created is that it artificially separated the consumer market from the company. That's what happened, okay? And therefore, because of that, most companies that we know of, right, for the last 100, 150 years, most companies that we know of operate in what we call the two-gear model, okay? Company have to acquire customer and they have to monetize customer, okay? This is basically marketing and transaction, okay? So to tell a company today, don't do marketing, it's crazy, right? You wouldn't do that. If you're starting up a company, right, somebody tell you, don't do marketing, right? You would say, you're out of your mind, right? So this has been the way, but before you don't need to really, previously, when you only have to go to the market and sell, you don't have to worry about marketing. You just go to market and you sell. That's it, right? It's one gear. Now you have to focus on two gear, okay? So big companies today have a lot of practice with acquisition and monetization. Big companies have hundreds of years of practice with acquisition and monetization, okay? Now, the problem is that technology advancement don't stop. there's a new wave of technology that came and actually disrupted this way of business again, okay? And that's actually social media, okay? Social media is very disruptive, okay? If you have read a book, I mean, I'm not sure how many people actually know this book. This book is called Clue Train Manifesto. It predicted that social media is going to be very disruptive before social media was even mainstream, okay? And I don't expect a lot of you to know about it because it's actually not very well known, but it's actually very influential, okay? Because this book is actually published in 1999, okay? Back in 1999, there were no Facebook, there were no Twitter, okay? But this book was able to predict that social media is going to be very disruptive. And it even says that, if you could read the subtitle here, this is the end of business as usual. What you've been doing for the last 100 years is not going to work anymore. Not going to work anymore, okay? And it's able to predict this based on one simple thesis. Okay, the main thesis of this book is that the market have changed again. The market is no longer a place where you go and trade and do transaction. The new market is where conversation happen. Markets are conversation now, okay? The market have changed, okay? So now, let me ask you a simple question. Where do you think people have conversation today? Where do you think people have conversation today? Yeah, people have conversation on social media, right? Social, mobile, everywhere, right? People have conversation on these social media channels. So if you are a very practical-minded business owner, you're a CEO, right, executive, what would you do? What would you do? Yeah, just acquire on social media, right? That's actually a perfectly reasonable conclusion to arrive, right? Perfectly reasonable conclusion. Therefore, even though the market have changed completely, people are still doing this. They're still doing acquisition and monetization. The problem is that the fundamental of the market have already changed, right? If you continue to do this acquisition and monetization, it's actually not scalable nor sustainable, okay? Why is that? Why is it not sustainable? Let me try to explain why that is, okay? So the thing about, digital acquisition is that they're different. They're kind of strange, okay? Digital acquisition, in digital world, you don't actually keep what you acquire. Like, you may run a really, really successful marketing campaign, and you may think that you have 1 million followers, 1 million fans, but you don't actually keep those followers, nor do you keep those fans. Mark Zuckerberg still keeps all your fans, right? So what are you actually acquiring here? What are you acquiring here? What are you actually acquiring there? Huh? Short term? Yeah? Okay, very close, okay? What you're acquiring is people's short attention span, right? That's what you're acquiring, right? So this acquisition is actually very different from the traditional acquisition, right? Traditional, when you say acquisition of a customer, right, you don't actually acquire a customer until you monetize them, right? So what are you acquiring there? You're acquiring people's attention span, right? You're acquiring people's attention. So it is true that you can monetize people while you capture their attention, but what do we know about people's attention? You heard it from Altu. Yeah, very short, right? These goldfish have memories of 9 seconds, okay? Just to put that in context, okay? So our attention is very, very short, right? So what is the implication for your business? The implication for your business is that, yes, you can monetize them while you capture their attention, but because of our attention shift away very quickly, you have to spend the money that you just earned for monetizing them to reacquire them back, right? Now, can you see why that's not sustainable, right? How many people here are from marketing organization? Some of you, okay? So marketers have to do this again and again. They have to do campaign after campaign after campaign after campaign to reacquire, to recapture people's attention over and over again, right? Not very sustainable, okay? Now, can you see why that's not sustainable? Everybody can see that, right? Okay, now the question is, how do you turn this into a sustainable business model? How do you turn it into a sustainable business model? Okay, so I had the pleasure to work with Jeffrey Moore on this problem. Basically, we basically fiddled with this 2-gear model for a long time, and after a while, we basically come to the conclusion that with 2 gear, it's actually not possible. It's not possible to make this sustainable with just 2 gear, okay? You have to have 2 more gear. That's why we call this the 4-gear model, okay? So that's why I call this is a history repeating itself again. Because business used to be the case that business only have to focus on one thing, 1 gear, okay? Go to the market and sell, that's it, right? But technology came, transportation, communication came, right? So transportation and communication allow business to do more. So business have to take advantage of that and do more with it, right? If they don't, those businesses are not going to be around very long, okay? So as a result, you take advantage of those technology to do more. Instead of just going to the market and sell, now you have to do marketing and transaction, right? Now, we are at a very interesting time today, right now. Okay, we are at a time where at the cusp of disruption right now because social media have disrupted the way business is operating, okay? With this 2-gear model is no longer sustainable. You have to have 2 more gear. That's why we call this 4-gear model. And so the first of the 2 extra gear is engagement, okay? What does engagement allow you to do? It basically allows you to sustain your monetization, right? So what happened, think about this. What happened when you engage with your customer? You capture their attention for a longer time, right? Okay? So as what I say, if you capture their period of attention for a longer time, you can monetize them longer, right? That's what it is. But in reality, what happened is that when you actually engage with your customer, you build stronger relationship with your customer, okay? When you engagement actually builds relationship, right? If you have a lot of engagement with your friend, right, you build stronger relationship with your friend, right? If you have a lot of engagement with your customer, you build stronger relationship with your customer. What happens when you have strong relationship with your customer? They become loyal, right? They become loyal customer. And what do loyal customers do? Yeah, they buy more. They repeat doing business with you, right? And that's how you can monetize them over and over and over again. That's how you sustain monetization, okay? So that's really what happened. Okay, so that's the first of the 2 extra gear, engagement. The second of the 2 extra gear is enlistment. Okay, you all probably have heard of engagement, but I think a lot of you probably have never heard of enlistment, right? What is enlistment anyway? Enlistment is about leveraging your customers to help you do work that's normally done by your employee, okay? It's leveraging your customer to help you do work that's normally done internally by your employees, okay? So one example of enlistment is advocacy. Your customers are actually not obligated to be an advocate for you, right? They just buy your product and you use it, right? They're not obligated to say anything, to refer friends to you or anything, right? But if they do, they are actually helping your marketing team, right? Okay? So advocacy is one form of enlistment, but there's actually many, many more, and we're going to see some examples of that later on, okay? So keep in mind that enlistment is actually leveraging your customer to help you do work that's normally done by your employee, okay? So basically, when you have enlistment, what happens is that it helps you scale your acquisition. Why do you think it helps you scale? Why do you think it helps you scale, okay? So because most of the companies that we know of typically have a lot more customer than they have employees, right? Think of your own company. How many employees do you have and how many customers do you have, okay? Typically for large enterprise, big brands, right, you have a lot more customer than you have employees, right? So if your customer is actually helping you, that's actually much more scalable. If not, your employees, right, your marketing, your support agents, they have to do all the work. Your employees have to do all the work, right? So if your customers are helping you, it's much more scalable. Not only is it much more scalable, today in the social world where people have access to information, freely access to information that's available, right? It's actually much more effective as well because consumers trust other consumers more than they trust the brand, okay? We have statistics showing that 84% of the consumers trust other consumers. Only 14% of the consumers trust brand, okay? So not only is it more scalable, it's actually more effective Now, when you have all four of this gear all spinning together, right, basically you create something called a viral loop, right? This loop is a positive feedback loop that feeds on itself, and it's going to be sustained. It's going to be sustainable, right? That's easier to said than done, okay? Because to make this sustainable, every gear have to spin, right? If one gear slows down, or if one gear stops, then the whole loop cannot go faster than the slowest gear, right? So you have to focus on all four gears, right? You have to spin all four of the gears, right? Okay, so it's just like before, right? Before, a company just have to go to the market and sell. With technology, transportation, and communication, company have to do marketing and transaction, right? You cannot just focus on transaction and don't do marketing, right? You have to focus on both gear. Now with social media, you have to acquire, engage, monetize, and also enlist, right? Technology allow you to do more. You have to take advantage of them, and really do more. Otherwise, you won't be around, okay? In 100 years or so, you won't be around, okay? All right, so now, as I said before, big companies have a lot of practice with marketing and transaction, acquisition and monetization. Hundreds of years of practice. What they haven't had a lot of practice is with engagement and enlistment. Both of these are pretty new concepts, okay? Now, engagement, about maybe 5 or 6 years ago when I talked to companies, many companies don't know why they need to engage their customer. Why do I have to talk to my customer, right? They just say, I just sell them stuff, right? I just broadcast my advertising, show them stuff. Why do I need to engage with my customer? This is like 5, 6 years ago when I talked to companies. But 5 or 6 years later, today, every single company that I talk to know they need to engage. There's still a lot of problems. They still have a lot of questions about about engagement. They don't know what's the best way to engage, who to engage, how to engage, what's the ROI of engagement, okay? There's still a lot of questions about engagement, but one thing that every company that I talk to agree on today is that we do need to engage our customer, okay? Is that what you see here in Turkey? I don't know this market as well as in the other part of the world, right? But every marketer you talk to, they know they need to engage. They may not know, they still have a lot of questions, but they know they need to engage, right? Okay, so enlistment today is like engagement 5, 6 years ago. People don't know why they need to leverage their customer. I have employees doing the job. Why do I have to leverage my customer, right? So people don't know about it. People don't know why they need to do it, right? So hopefully, 5, 6 years, maybe 10 years later, enlistment will also be a common thing, right? So this is actually, as you see, that this enlistment gear is actually the gear that closes this feedback loop, right? It's actually very important. It's actually what allows this loop to be sustainable. Without this enlistment, you're losing this feedback, and you cannot sustain this forever, okay? All right, so how should you think about engagement and enlistment? Engagement and enlistment is actually two ends of a spectrum, okay? Unlike most marketers think, engagement is not one thing. A lot of times people say that engagement is like watching your video, that's engagement. Tweeting your retweeting your tweets, that's engagement, right? Those are all engagement. Coming to your store, that's also engagement too, right? So basically, engagement is not just one thing. It's actually everything that the consumer do that touches your brand. It's an engagement with your brand, right? And this engagement have different depth to it, right? They have different depth. And basically, if you actually organize them by how deep this engagement is, it falls into a spectrum, okay? So if you say, okay, I kind of call out this as 5 categories, but there's actually every single thing that the consumer do basically falls somewhere along here, right? Basically, watching a video will be a consume type of engagement, right? Downloading a white paper will be also a consume type of thing, right? And sharing, like retweeting your tweet maybe down here is a little bit deeper engagement, right? So engagement is actually many, many, many things. It actually is a whole spectrum of things. Everything that a consumer do basically fall in this spectrum. Now, so what is engagement and enlistment? The way you should look at engagement and enlistment is that they are two ends of a spectrum. Today, when marketers talk about engagement, what they really mean is these shallow engagement. What they mean is this, right? Sharing, retweeting your stuff, liking them, and all this stuff. Now, what about enlistment? Okay, like I said before, enlistment is about leveraging your customer to help you do work that's normally done inside your company, right? So, anybody know what co-creation is? What is co-creation? Co-creation is about, leveraging the intelligence of your customers to collaborate with the brand to create mutual value, right? It's a collaboration between the customer and the company to create value. That's what co-creation is, all right? Now, keep in mind, co-creation is a collaboration between the customer and the brand, right? But customer, again, is not obligated to collaborate with the brand at all, with the company at all. But when they are collaborating with the company, they are definitely helping the company. They're helping your product team. They're helping your engineering team to create better products, right? So by the time they are co-creating with you, they definitely are enlisted. But like I said, enlistment actually begins much earlier, right? Enlistment starts when your customers are sharing your content. If your customers are sharing your content on your behalf, they are actually helping your marketing team, right? So basically, you could think of enlistment as simply the deepest form of engagement, right? And engagement is just really, really shallow enlistment, okay? Maybe not with consume, because when people are just consuming your content, right, they're not actually helping your employee at all, right? But starting with sharing, right, they're actually helping your employee doing their work, okay? So basically, their engagement and enlistment are just two ends of the spectrum, okay? All right, so just to put that in a little bit of context, right? So basically, Lithium, I work for Lithium, okay? I'm the chief scientist at Lithium. Lithium our mission is to help companies spin this two gear, right? Companies have a lot of practice with acquisition and monetization, but they don't have a lot of practice with engagement and enlistment. That's what we do. We help them spin this two gear so they could have a sustainable business strategy in this social world, okay? So let's take a look at some examples of this, okay? So we have a lot of examples with where you can actually see customers actually engage in a really shallow way with the company. But how about some examples of customers actually deeply engage, like creating content for the company? Okay, why would a customer create content for the company? Why would they do that? Okay, so this is an example, right? So we do that with a total community with shared interest. Okay, so this is example with the bank, Barclays, right? They basically created a travel community. Now, this travel community is about travel. People go there to share their travel stories, and if you go there, you can see hundreds and thousands of stories being shared there every single day. And there's even a widget that shows you how many stories being shared that day. Okay, so this is stories about travel. But if you actually look at this Barclay, right? They actually have a hidden agenda, right? The hidden agenda is they actually provide a credit card designed for travelers, right? So that's what they want to drive, right? So now, if you actually look behind this community and look at some of the statistics, it's pretty amazing, okay? If you actually look at these statistics, right, this is actually maybe a little hard to read here. So if you look at this, this is actually 6-month period from April to October, okay? Now, if you actually look at the number of story that's being shared, right, this is actually a lot of story. There's actually 105,000 stories being shared, all right? And that's being shared over a 6-month period, right? If you divide this out, that's about almost 600 stories a single day, okay? 600 stories, a travel story a single day, right? Basically, now, these stories are all shared by customers. They're not employees writing the story. They're not marketing agents who are writing the story, right? So these people are creating content to drive your marketing. They're creating content to drive awareness of this travel credit card, to drive SEO, right? Okay? So you may say that, well, sharing travel stories is easy, right? Because it's lifestyle. I just take some photos and upload it, and I share my story. That's easy, right? But what is the ROI, right, of this? Just think about this, right? ROI, is all calculated by this very simple formula. It has two parts, a cost-saving part and a revenue lift part. The cost-saving part is easier to quantify, right? Basically, you can actually you could basically fix the work, right, and see how much it costs your current way versus the way of enlisting your customer. Basically, you can show that enlisting your customer costs a lot less, right? That's the ROI, right? Basically, you just have to ask yourself, how many full-time writers you have to hire in order to write 600 stories a day, right? How many full-time marketing writers you have to hire in order to write 600 stories a day every single day of the year, okay? If you have to, pay them a lot more than the cost of enlisting your customer, then obviously enlistment is much cheaper, right? Or you could do it the other way. You could fix the cost, right? And then show that enlistment actually produce more work, right? You could say, okay, what's the cost of enlistment, right? And then how many stories can you produce if you were to take your enlistment cost to hire these full-time writers? How many stories can they write? If they can write only 200 stories a day, every day, then obviously enlistment is a lot better, right? So that's very simple, very easy so when you're actually managing a project, right, sometimes it's important to demonstrate ROI, right? So this is a way to kind of demonstrate ROI. So as I said before, sharing travel stories is easy. But what about something really technical? Really, for example, in this community, Lenovo, they basically have a discussion forum, okay, where they create content for support to drive issue resolution. Some people have problem using their computer or their laptop, right? And people go ask the question in the community, right? And customers basically help them answer each other's question. Like I said, customers are not obligated to answer anybody else's question, right? But if they are, they're actually helping your support agents. They're helping your support team, right? So that's a form of enlistment too, right? Okay, so they're creating this content, right? But if you look at it, the statistics again, right? I'm a data scientist. I like to present data. So anyway, there's actually 634 solutions every month. Okay, so, well, that's not a lot, right? But if you actually look at the amount of views on those solutions, it's almost 1.2 million views on those solutions, okay? So even a small number of those people who view the solution, found the solution, and don't call the call center, that's a huge cost saving for your company, right? Okay? So that's the ROI, right? Okay, now, so those are two examples of where customers are actually creating content to help you do marketing, creating content to help you do support and service your customer, right? Let's take a look at two more examples from the same two companies with co-creation, okay? All right, so here, again, you do it through a community with shared purpose, right? So Lenovo, coming back to Lenovo again, like besides this discussion forum, they also have a knowledge base. Typically, if you look at knowledge-based articles, who write the knowledge-based article in your company? Who actually writes them? Probably your support team, right? Your higher tier support team would document the cases being dealt with, and they write them up, how they resolve it, and all the symptoms and all the stuff, right? And it becomes a knowledge-based article, right? Now, these knowledge-based articles, they actually, in this community, people are actually creating content for support and product improvement. They create this in the tribal knowledge base, okay? And if you actually look at what the customers of Lenovo are actually doing, right? They actually help them create these articles, review and edit them, publish it, and also revise and update them, right? Why would customer do this, right? Why would customer do this, right? Again, they're not obligated, right? But they are, okay? And the reason is actually, we actually use a lot of gamification, right? But as I know that our two is going to talk about gamification, I'm not going to talk about it. Basically, you motivate your customer to help you do work, right? And that's why we're able to achieve this, right? They're not obligated to do any of this, but they are doing it because we use gamification, right? And if that's of interest, we could talk about that next time. But anyway, these super fans, these super users are actually, have 20 to 40% involvement in the creation of this knowledge-based article. And if you actually go to this knowledge-based article area, you can see that they created almost like close to 4,700 articles in the span of like 5 years, okay? The first year they actually generated, it's almost 1,000 articles a year, okay? Now that's a lot. Just imagine, if you want to ask, what's the ROI? Just ask yourself, how many technical writers you have to hire to produce 1,000 articles a year? Okay? Like same. Okay, and moreover, not only are they producing these articles, they're actually translating these articles into foreign languages. How many technical translators you have to hire to translate this into foreign language, to translate 1,800 articles into foreign languages, right? That's your ROI there, all right? Okay, now, so that's the example with Lenovo. Let's take a look at Barclays. Again, coming back to Barclays, a banking example, okay? So they basically co-created a credit card with their customer. Okay, so everything about this credit card is basically co-created. Like even everything from the design, the color, the look of it, all the way to the terms of service, the late fees, are actually crowdsourced from the customer. Right? That's pretty innovative, right? Which bank asks you how much you should pay for late fees, right? Very few banks do that. Of course, they ask them in a really clever way, right? They don't just ask you how much late fee you want to pay, right? Because most people say no, right? But surprisingly, these community members, they actually say, we want to have late fees. This is amazing, right? This is totally not what they expected, okay? They actually, why would a customer ask the bank to charge them late fee if they are late, okay? It's because they show them all the data, right, of how they operate internally, okay? So when they actually co-created this credit card, right, some of the outcome were expected. For example, right, customer retention was improved by 25%. Okay, that's expected because if you created something, you're probably going to use it, right? There was also the complaint was actually decreased by 50% as well, right? Why is that? Because, well, you asked for all these features, so why complain about it, right? So complaint decrease as well. So these are kind of expected kind of results. Now, what's not really expected is that the people actually love to use this credit card. They actually spend 23% more on these credit cards. That's also somewhat expected. It's not what Barclays didn't expect that, but I kind of expected it because, if you co-created something, of course you're going to use it more, right? But what's really, really unexpected, even I did not expect this, is that people are using this credit card more responsibly. 54% lower delinquency rate. They are using it more because they love it, but they're also using it more responsibly, right? That's amazing because they actually know how a credit card actually works, right? Because now they actually estimated $10 million of saving, right, annual benefit in ROI. That's how significant it is if you enlist your customers, okay? All right. So the question you're going to ask me is, well, how do you go from engage to enlist, right? So part of it is the technology, right? It's a gamification technology that we employ on our platform. So that's one component. But then the other part is that if you actually look at these 4 components, right, why digital transformation fail, right? Like I said before, digital transformation always starts with some kind of technology, some kind of digital technology. That's why it's called digital transformation, right? But the next thing is that you have to have a strategy. You have to have a strategy that actually help you execute. And finally, you need the practice and execution to actually carry it out and make sure that you really do have the transformation in the company, right? So what is this strategy? What is this strategy that help you transform sustainably, right? Okay, if you actually look at this 4-gear model again, right, you've seen this word total community. What is this total community anyway? Okay, to understand what total community is, you have to understand what is the difference between a social network versus a community. A lot of marketers, a lot of practitioners of social media actually don't understand what's the difference between community and social network. Because they would just say, oh, they're all social media. They're all just social media. It's actually very different, okay? So social network is a group of people. Community is also a group of people, but they're held together by something different. Social network is held together by interpersonal relationship, whereas community is held together by a common interest, okay? Now, it doesn't mean that social network doesn't have a common interest, right? Take a look at your favorite social network, say Facebook, okay? Do you have some friends on your Facebook right, that's connected to you that have different interests as you? You probably do, right? Let me ask you, are you going to unfriend those friends because they have different interests? You won't, right? You won't. Why? Because that's not what holds you together. What holds you together is the friendship, right? The friendship is what holds you together, right? I mean, it's nice to have common interests so you could do things together, but if not, that's fine. What holds you together is the friendship, it's a relationship, not the interest, right? Community is just the reverse. What holds the community together is the common interest, okay? We all here have a common interest, right? We're all here to learn about project management and the future of technology and how it affects the way we work, right? That's why we're all here, right? You may have relationship, but that's not required. Some people here I know, right? I know before, right? But some of you, a lot of you, I met for the first time. We don't have any relationship, but that's not what holds us together. What holds us together here is the common interest to learn and to build the future, right? So, okay. So it turns out that the most important the word in the definition of a social network is that these relationships are actually pre-existing relationships. So take a look at your Facebook network again, right? There's actually academics, researchers who survey people's Facebook friendship. And what they find is that over 99% of people's friendship on Facebook were first established somewhere else. So they will already exist, right? If you look at your own Facebook friends again, right? Look at your own Facebook friends. Ask yourself this. Do you know them on Facebook? Or do you know them somewhere else and then get connected on Facebook later? It's probably the latter, right? Most of you know these people somewhere else, right? So if you look at your Facebook friends again, right? Every single friend that connects to you on Facebook, you actually share some common community with them in the past. So it turns out that, like, these relationships already exist, but they were actually first built, first established in some community. Okay? Basically, if you look at your Facebook friend again, right, they're your friend today because you share some common community with them in the past. Whether they are the same kindergarten that you went to, same company that you work with them, same town that you grew up with them, right? Those are the physical community in which you build those relationships into a strong tie. And that's why Facebook, as a social network, is the way to maintain those strong ties. Relationships are built in community, but they are maintained on social networks. That's how it works, okay? So social network and community are actually very different, okay? They're not the same. Now, given that background, a little bit of sociology that you just learned, you kind of have to ask yourself, what is the true community for your brand? What is the true community for your brand? Right? A lot of people would just think that, well, isn't that just my online community? If I have an online community for my customers, isn't that the community for my brand? Yes, it is, but actually, this is only a small part of the true community for your brand, okay? To answer the question of, like, your online, where is your online community? If you look at this four-gear model again, right? Basically, where you want to monetize is inside your company, because nobody wants to give away money to other people, right? Where do you want to acquire customer? You want to acquire customer outside. You want to acquire customer in these public social media channels, right? So the online community is basically where you engage in lists. And so this is online community. It's actually where these two gears happen. Now, if you actually ask yourself, what is the true community for your brand? Then you have to go back to the basic and ask yourself, who are all the people who have a common interest in your brand? Right? Who are all the people who have a common interest in your brand? So who are those people? Certainly customers have a common interest in your brand. Who else? Who else have a common interest in the brand? Employees, right? Certainly prospect employees, right? Partners, right? Have a common interest, right? Shareholders, right? So definitely these people all want your brand to be successful, right? Some people say, well, what about competitors? Right? Competitors actually have an interest in your brand, but it's actually not a common interest, right? Because they want to kill you, right? So, right, competitors actually have an opposite interest. They have an interest, but it's not a common interest, it's the opposite interest, right? Okay, so these are all the people who have a common interest in your brand, right? But where are all these people? These are all the people who have a common interest, right? The customers, some of them may be in your community, some of them may be outside, right? And prospects, most of them are probably outside. Most of them probably come into the community once in a while, but they probably go outside after they find the answer. Employees actually inside your company, right? Your partner, your shareholder, your influencers are somewhere in some third-party platform that you may not even have control of, right? So this group is your total community. This group of people is the group of people who have a common interest in your brand, right? This group of people is the true community for your brand, right? And as you can see, the online community only is a small part of this, right? There's lots of people who are outside of this, not part of this online community, that are that's the part of your true community for the brand, right? Okay, so keep in mind that, if you want to spin the enlistment gear, if you want to go from engage to enlist, right, you have to involve the employees, right? Employees have to basically change the way they work. If they don't, nothing will change, right? The employees are still, basically, changes cannot happen if your employee continue to do work the way they used to do, okay? Don't make this mistake, okay? Don't make this mistake. Now, if you actually expect something different to come out of it, that's actually insane, okay? Einstein said that, right? So if you do the same thing and expect a different outcome, that's insane, right? That's insane. So basically, if your employees are doing the same thing, you expect a transformation, a change, that's insane, okay? So now let's go back and take a look at some of the failure, some of the reason why digital transformation projects fail, right? So these are the reason why it failed. So how do you actually fix some of this, right? So now, certainly, if you use a technology that's built for tomorrow, then it automatically fixes this problem, right? Old technology, right? And technology built for tomorrow are technology that also need to be integrated with your legacy system too, right? If they cannot be integrated with the legacy system, right, then it's no good, right? So second of all, you actually need a strategy, right? And what we propose is that if you have a total community strategy that engage, right? So you know what a total community is now, right? Total community is the group of everybody who have a common interest in your brand. That includes your customer, your employees, your prospects, your partners, your shareholders, everybody, right? You actually, as a strategy, the total community is also a strategy that says you need to actually engage with every one of those people. A lot of companies today are already engaging their customer, but are you engaging your employees? Are you engaging your shareholders? Are you engaging your partners, right? So you actually have to engage. As a strategy, it means that you have to engage with everybody who have a common interest in your brand, right? Now, if you actually take this strategy is all centered around customer, right? So it gets rid of this customer-centric issue already, fixes that automatically, because total community is basically around customer, right? And once you start thinking about being customer-centric, you can no longer think short-term, because who wants a short-term customer? Who wants a customer for 1 month? Nobody wants a customer. You want a customer for a long time, right? So when you focus on the customer, it's automatically a long-term thinking, right? Now, when you actually also adopt this total community strategy, right, basically everything is focused around serving your customer and giving them a better customer experience, right? So the process basically the misalignment is minimal, right? Anything that's not aligned, not focusing on serving your customer and giving them a better experience, just get rid of those processes, right? I mean, not that every step of the process have to focus on that, but the goal of all the process should be to drive towards a better customer experience, right? So it gets rid of this misalignment of process. And moreover, if you get rid of this misalignment of process, automatically people will collaborate much more, right? And people will start thinking that, will not think that this is actually just a silo effect. It's not just a marketing project. If support departments start collaborating with your marketing department, right, then they will not think that this is only a marketing thing or only an IT thing. It's a cross-department thing. It's a company-wide transformation, right? So finally, if you actually have a technology that's really simple, easy to use, right, then basically you don't actually need a lot of training for your people, right? And also, when you actually don't need a lot of training for your people, they can actually spend more time to innovate with your customer, right? So it gets rid of a lot of problems. So when you actually adopt a good technology that's built for tomorrow, and you actually adopt a customer-centric strategy, such as total community, it gets rid of a lot of the failure points, right? It doesn't fix all the problem, because you still have to decide what digital transformation means for you, for your company, right? I mean, I can't run your business for you, right? I mean, if I run your business for you, I should take all the money too, right? So, right? All right, so basically, if you actually adopt this social-driven customer digital transformation strategy, it has a much higher rate of success, okay? Because it automatically gets rid of all these challenges already, okay? You still have to do something yourself, but some of the biggest challenge are already fixed. Make sense so far? Okay, all right. So now, finally, I just wanted to look at a little bit of a social maturity. So company often ask, so where do I begin? Where do I start this social-driven digital transformation, right? So basically, you can start by just listening. A lot of companies just start by just listening. They don't do anything, right? And now, the next thing is that they start experimenting, right? Basically, they start experimenting. This is basically, they're still doing the two gear, right? They have not done anything yet, right? When they actually just listen. When they start to experiment with something, they start to engage, right? So they start spinning the engagement gear, right? And depending on how much you engage, you may drive some more acquisition and actually enlistment as well. And then finally, the third stage is where companies start to operationalize this process, right? This is actually when you actually spin your enlistment gear as well. When you spin your enlistment gear, it closes this feedback loop. It makes it sustainable, right? And depending on how much you enlist your customer, right, you may actually drive more acquisition and drive more ROI, monetization, right? But next step is that companies start to integrate and expand the value, right? You may start this social-driven digital transformation as a support project, but marketing can also benefit from that. Product can also benefit from that. Okay, many other departments can also benefit from that. That's how you slowly infuse this and to transform the entire company, right? And finally, you get to this stage where all four gears are spinning. Basically, the companies will optimize and evolve around the changing market. Regardless of how the market change, your company is going to evolve with it, right? And so this is what I call, this is a 5-stage social maturity journey, okay? And so with that, I'm finished, right? And if you want to read more about this 4-gear model, I have a couple of books that I've written, okay? Science of Social and Science of Social 2. And the 4-gear model is written in the Science of Social 2. So with that, I wanted to open up to questions if there's, there's no timer there. I actually don't know how much time I have left. So, yeah. So also, like today, if you're interested in some other parts of work that I do on data, I'm a data scientist. So if you want to learn about how to transform your data into competitive advantages or market disruption, you could come to the workshop as well, okay? So with that, thank you very much. Yeah.
Thank you, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Wait for me.
Okay.
Evet, sevgili Merve'nin küçük bir hatırası olacak bugünün. Gel.
It's a pleasure for us to listen to you here, and it's a gift from PMI Turkey.
Thank you very much. It's my pleasure to be here too. Thank you.
Thank you. And you will have it free in Turkey.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Now I'm official.
Efendim 10 dakika kahve molamız var. 10 dakika sonra tekrar birlikte olacağız. Bu arada öğleden sonra workshop'u var. Michael Wu'nun. Arzu edenler katılabilirler.